On the 27th of April, 2010, a telecommunications technician from Mallorca stands on the summit of Annapurna, the deadliest 8,000er on Earth. The clock reads 4:15 in the afternoon, 2 hours until dark, hours of descent down an ice wall to the nearest camp. And on the way down, 200 meters of fixed ropes will have vanished. Within hours, Tolo Calafat will be sitting paralyzed at 7,600 meters under a full moon and with a perfectly clear mind, pleading over the satellite phone, "Come up for me, for the sake of my children. No one will be there. The only helicopter capable of reaching him will be busy on another mountain. Sherpas will refuse to climb for 6,000 euros. And his famous partners will descend to camp, igniting a scandal that will tear Spanish mountaineering apart. This is the story of how a series of small decisions, a late summit push, a headlamp packed in someone else's bag, a missing rope, adds up to a verdict that no one ever handed down. The island of Mallorca has no mountains. Its highest point, Puig Major, barely reaches 1,500 meters, and for most of the year, its summit is hidden behind clouds that sit lower here than anywhere else in Europe. This is an island of beaches, pine trees, and salt wind. It produces sailors, fishermen, hotel waiters for tourists, but not mountaineers. Tolo Calafat, Marcus, known to everyone simply as Tolo, is born in 1970 in Palma, in the working-class neighborhood of Sant Gatlleu. He comes from neither a sporting family nor a family of travelers. His future profession, telecommunications technician, will feed his family and fund the expeditions that professional climbers finance through grants and sponsorship deals. But Tolo has one quality that means little on Mallorca, yet is worth more than technique and experience in the Himalayas. He does not know how to get tired. In his youth, he takes up triathlon, then switches to mountain running and mountain biking. He trains 3 hours a day, sometimes more, moving from one group to another, switching disciplines as though a single dose of exertion were never enough. He turns endurance into a way of life rather than a competitive result. By the late 90s, Calafat becomes one of the first organizers of trail running in the Balearic Islands. He founds the Cursaval de Soler, a mountain race through a valley squeezed between the sea and the Serra de Tramuntana ridge, and helps create the Copa Balear de Carreras per Montaña. For Mallorca, this is a brand new sport, and Tolo builds it almost single-handedly. People who know him all describe the same thing. He draws everyone in. His childhood friend Juan Antonio Olivieri will later say that Tolo had not quarreled with anyone since school, since the day he was not allowed to play ball. He is generous, self-deprecating, infectiously cheerful. He marries Margalita. They have 2 children, a son named Michele and a younger child who, by the spring of 2010, will not yet be 2 years old. The Sherpas who will meet him years later at 7,000 meters will give him the nickname Tolito Sherpa, the Little Sherpa, because this smiling Spaniard from the coast moves through the mountains with an energy that astonishes even those born at 4,000 meters. Everything Calafat knows about mountains he learned on his own, without a school, without mentors, without a tradition. On his island, there are no mountaineering clubs. There is only the sea, which he will leave behind for the snow. Olivieri, that same friend who was once kept from playing ball, turns out to be more than just a buddy from Sant Gatlleu. He is the person with whom Calafat will travel the path from Pyrenean trails to the summit of Everest. In 1988, both 18 years old, they climb Anido, 3,404 meters, the highest point of the Pyrenees. For 2 kids from an island where the most serious elevation gain is the hike up to the Lluc Monastery, this is their first real mountain experience, and it never lets them go. Through the 90s, they work methodically, as if they have set themselves a program with increasing difficulty. Monte Posés, Monte Perdido, the High Pyrenees, then Mont Blanc and Monte Rosa, the Alps, 4,000 plus, glaciers, crampons, a different league. Then Elbrus, 5,642 meters, the Caucasus, their first venture beyond Western Europe, their first experience at an altitude where the body begins operating by different rules. Each next mountain is a little higher than the last. Calafat does not skip steps. He is a technician by profession and by temperament. He measures progress in increments, checks each level before moving to the next. In 1999, this ladder brings them to Aconcagua, 6,962 meters, the highest point in South America. This is a full-blown expedition. Flights, base camp, acclimatization, oxygen deprivation, wind that rips tents apart at the seams. They reach the summit. Olivieri will remember later. Everything went beautifully, and they decided they could go higher. After Aconcagua, Calafat does not rush to the Himalayas. He goes to Peru, to the Cordillera Blanca, and hones his technique on 6,000ers. Ardasonraju, Alpamayo, Pisco, Ixinca, Urus, 5 peaks ranging from 5.5 to 6,000 meters. These are not record-setting mountains, but they teach what Mallorca never could. Ice axe work, travel across crevassed glaciers, nights at altitudes where the air holds half the oxygen of the coast. Over 15 years, from Anedo to the Cordillera Blanca, Calafat covers a journey that mountain nations cover through an infrastructure of clubs, federations, and generations. He builds himself as a mountaineer by hand, from whatever materials are available, without a system and without a safety net in the social sense. No grants, no scholarships, no place on a national team. Just a technician's salary and vacation days. All this time, Olivieri is by his side. They climb together, descend together, make decisions together. This partnership is not a contract, but a friendship that began in a schoolyard and was never interrupted in 20 years. Annapurna will be the last 8,000er Calafat will ever attempt. After the Cordillera Blanca, the logic of the ladder demands the next step, and in 2004, Calafat finds himself in the Himalayas for the first time. The goal is Cho Oyu, 8,201 meters, the 6th highest peak in the world. Technically, it is the most accessible 8,000er. The normal route up the northwest face requires no extreme climbing, which is why Cho Oyu is considered the classic entry ticket to high-altitude mountaineering. Beside him, as always, is Olivieri. At base camp, they share quarters with Jesus Calleja, a television host and climber whose face is known across all of Spain. For Calafat, this is more than an ascent. He is a reader of Desnivel magazine, a fan who grew up on stories of Himalayan expeditions. He calls himself a mitomano, a person obsessed with other people's feats. On Cho Oyu, he sees his heroes not on printed pages, but in the tent next door. They drink tea from the same pot, discuss the weather, complain about the cold. The summit is reached. Calafat returns to Mallorca with his first 8,000er and a new circle of acquaintances he calls his mountain family. A year later, in 2005, Calafat aims for the highest peak on the planet. The expedition Mallorca, adult de tot, Mallorca on top of the world, gathers a team of islanders, Calafat, Olivieri, Kate Glass, Palos. The route is the South Col, the classic Nepali approach. They share permits with groups led by the Aragonese climber Carlos Pauner and by Calleja. Everest does not surrender. Weather, exhaustion, tactical mistakes. The expedition ends in retreat. But Calafat responds to failure the only way he knows how. Instead of flying home, he signs up for the Tenzing Hillary Everest Marathon, a race at over 5,000 meters along the trails leading to base camp. He loses to the mountain and then immediately runs across it for the fun of it. In 2006, Calafat returns. Same mountain, same route, same partnership with Olivieri. May 18th, 8:30 in the morning, they stand on the summit of Everest, the first residence of the Balearic Islands in history to reach 8,848 meters. Sponsors, Consell de Mallorca, Yeza Endesa, Sun Nostra, Group Serra covered the budget, and Mallorca got a national hero. Local newspapers printed his photo on their front pages. The technician from Son Gotlo stands on the roof of the world. In 2 years, Calafat makes a leap that takes many climbers a decade, from an 8,000er debut to Everest. The method works, the ladder holds, each step leads to the next. But between Calafat and the professionals he now shares base camps with, there remains a distance that cannot be measured in meters of elevation gain. They go to the mountains because it is their profession. He goes because he cannot stop. Everest creates an illusion. If you have stood on the top of the world, you can climb anywhere, but high-altitude mountaineering does not work that way. Every 8,000er is a separate challenge with its own set of risks, and Everest via the South Col, for all its height, is technically easier than most of them. Calafat learns this firsthand, and the next 3 years become a story of persistence running into a ceiling again and again. In 2007, he flies to the Karakoram, to Broad Peak, 8,051 meters. Details of this expedition are scant. Neither the exact route nor the team composition is known. Only the outcome. Calafat reaches the central summit, roughly 8,011 meters, but not the main one. The difference is about 40 meters in elevation and several hundred meters of ridge that proved impassable that day. By strict mountaineering standards, this does not count as a Broad Peak ascent. Yet, in memorial articles and on Wikipedia, this climb will later be recorded as a full summit. The inflation begins here, during Calafat's lifetime, and no one corrects it. Around the same time, in 2007 or thereabouts, Calafat takes part in an expedition to Lhotse with Jesus Calleja as part of the television project Desafio Extremo, Failure. Around 2008, an attempt on Makalu, also unsuccessful. Information about these expeditions is contradictory. It is possible that Makalu and Lhotse were one and the same attempt described under different names. September 2009, Shishapangma, 8,027 meters, Tibet. The normal route up the northwest face. This time, the company is different. Beside him are Horia Kolibasanu and Nick Rice. And for the first time, Juanito Oyarzabal. Calafat climbs to the foresummit, roughly 8,013 meters. What remains is the final ridge, narrow, snow-covered, with cornices overhanging the abyss. For 3 hours, the group tries to push through. The ridge will not let them. They turn around. By the end of 2009, Calafat's record looks impressive if you count by number of expeditions, 7 trips to 8,000ers in 5 years. But if you count honestly, by summits, the picture is different. He has 2 real 8,000ers, Cho Oyu and Everest. On Broad Peak and Shishapangma, only 4 summits. Lhotse and Makalu, retreats. Calafat himself understands this. At Annapurna Base Camp, he will joke, "I will be the first person to climb the 4 summits of all 14 8,000ers. No one has done that yet." The joke gets a laugh, but behind it lies a sober understanding of his own limits. The problem is that this sobriety is selective. Calafat sees the pattern, jokes about it, but draws no conclusion from it. Instead, he accepts an invitation that will change everything. Oyarzabal invites him to Annapurna. The acquaintance that began on Shishapangma moves Calafat from the League of Amateur Expeditions into the orbit of Spain's most famous mountaineer. And the stakes instantly go through the roof. Juanito Oyarzabal is not just a climber. He is an institution. A Basque from Vitoria, 54 years old, the first Spaniard to complete all 14 8,000ers without supplemental oxygen. By the spring of 2010, he has 23 ascents above 8,000 meters behind him, and he is going for his 24th as part of his own project, to summit each of the 14 twice. All of Spain knows him. Newspapers quote his opinions. His invitation to join an expedition is a pass into another league. Calafat receives that pass after Shishapangma. They spent 3 hours together on a snowy ridge, turned around, stayed on good terms, and Oyarzabal invites him to the next objective. Annapurna 1, 8,091 meters, the 10th highest peak in the world, but the first in fatality rate. By 2010, for every 3 successful ascents, there is 1 death. No other 8,000er kills with such regularity. The north face, the only route climbed in spring, is a wall of steep ice, avalanche-prone couloirs, and unstable séracs. Spring 2010 is a record season, 26 ascents from 8 countries, all via the north face, all in the same weather window. Many teams on one route, shared infrastructure, fixed ropes, and a boot-pack trail, depending on an unspoken cooperation between expeditions, each with its own goals and priorities. Alongside Calafat on the summit push will be Carlos Pauner, an Aragonese climber going for his 9th 8,000er, and the Romanian Horia Kolibasanu, a proven partner from Shishapangma, 2 Sherpas, 50-year-old Dawa and Sonam, assigned as Calafat's personal assistant. A personal Sherpa is standard practice for participants who need extra watching. The very fact of the assignment tells everyone from the start. The gap in skill level is understood. Oyarzabal will later say something that becomes one of the most quoted lines in this entire story. On the way up, We could see that technically Tolo was not that strong, but that is afterward in front of cameras when Calafat is already dead. Before the summit push, the question is never raised. There is no discussion of under what conditions Calafat should be turned around. No plan is drawn up for what happens if the weakest member cannot descend from the most dangerous mountain on the planet. There is a tacit assumption. Everyone is an adult. Everyone is responsible for themselves. On Annapurna, that will not be enough. The 27th of April, 2010. Around 2 in the morning, the summit team leaves Camp 4 at roughly 7,100 meters. Total darkness. A headlamp beam picks out only the nearest meter of ice. The temperature is well below -30. The wind is still bearable, but it will grow with every meter gained. The first thing the group does on departure is fix a rope line through a steep couloir. This is insurance for the descent. They will come back down these ropes when they no longer have the strength for free climbing. The ropes are anchored, the route is marked. Everything according to plan. The climb is slow. A bergschrund, the crevasse between glacier and wall, demands time and technique. The cold slows every movement. Each step above 7,500 meters costs twice as much as the one before. The group starts to spread out. Irreversible and Poner pull ahead. Calafat and Sherpa Sonam fall behind. The gap widens, but not enough to alarm anyone. At these altitudes, everyone moves at their own pace, and that is normal as long as everyone is headed the same direction. At 10 in the morning, Egocheaga and Ramos, a separate Spanish pair, reach the summit first. By 3 in the afternoon, O Yunsun's team is on top. This means that by midday the summit is open, the trail is packed, the hardest sections have been climbed, but it also means the safe window is closing. In high-altitude mountaineering, there is a rule every climber above 7,000 meters knows: turn around no later than 2 in the afternoon. After that, a descent in darkness becomes inevitable, and a descent in darkness on an 8,000er is a statistic, not an adventure. Irreversible, Poner, and Calafat keep climbing. 2 o'clock passes, 3, 4. Wind on the summit ridge picks up to 60 kilometers per hour. The air holds a third of the oxygen found at sea level. Every breath is work. At 4 in the afternoon, or perhaps a little later, at 4:15, all 3 stand on the summit of Annapurna. 14 hours of climbing, about 2 hours until dark. Calafat is more exhausted by the ascent than the others. Irreversible will later admit the timing of the ascent was a critical mistake, but in the moment when someone needed to stop Calafat, or when everyone needed to stop, no one does. The summit is taken. Now they have to leave it, and there is no margin left. Not in time, not in strength, not in daylight. The descent begins immediately. No one lingers on the summit. Photographs, handshakes, a few seconds to take in where you were standing, and then straight down. The sun is already low, shadows on the north face stretch long, and the temperature drops with every passing minute. At 8,000 meters, sunset is not a beautiful moment. It is a countdown. The first blow comes an hour later. The group descends to the couloir where they fixed the rope that morning, and the rope is gone. 200 meters of fixed line, anchored by their own hands just hours earlier, have vanished. Poner will later blame the Korean expedition. Their team passed through between summit pushes and may have stripped the foreign ropes to use on their own section. The Koreans deny it. There are no independent witnesses, and this question will never be answered. But the consequences are immediate and irreversible. The couloir that in the morning was a prepared corridor with protection turns into a section of free climbing on steep ice, in the dark, with no reserves of strength. The pace drops catastrophically. Poner slips, his body slides down the slope, and only his ice axe, driven into the surface by reflex, stops the fall. He gets up, keeps going. The group fragments for good. Irreversible moves ahead, faster, more experienced, his body operating better on autopilot. Behind him, Poner with Sherpa Dawa, Calafat with Sherpa Sonam, farther behind. And the gap grows with every minute. Around 6:30 in the evening, Irreversible and Poner reach the diagonal, a long traversing section, and stop. They wait for Calafat, not only because he is a teammate, but for an entirely practical reason. Calafat's backpack contains the headlamps for the entire group. How they ended up with one person, no one will later be able to explain. Without them, further descent means moving blind along a wall where a single wrong step means falling into the void. They wait. Half an hour passes, an hour. Darkness becomes absolute. Cold penetrates through down suits, through gloves, through every layer. An hour and a half, 2.5. Calafat does not come. There is no radio communication between them. Only base camp can receive a signal, but cannot relay it between points on the wall. Oyarzábal and Pauner face a choice that at extreme altitude has no good option. Keep waiting and freeze, or descend without light and possibly survive. They descend. The journey to Camp 4 without headlamps, by memory and by touch, takes several more hours. Around midnight on the 28th of April, Oyarzábal, Pauner, and Sherpa Dawa reach the tents. Pauner is blind. He lost his snow goggles, and ultraviolet light at that altitude has burned his corneas. Oyarzábal has frostbitten feet and nose. All three are unable to move any farther. They are alive. Calafat is somewhere above, alone, in the dark, on the wall of Annapurna. He is not entirely alone. He has a radio, but only for communication with base camp. Around 7:30 in the evening of the 27th of April, while Oyarzábal and Pauner are still waiting for him on the diagonal, Calafat reaches base camp on the radio. His voice is clear, his words precise. He reports extreme exhaustion, unable to stand, no food or water. He asks someone to come up and help. Base camp replies, "Try to descend on your own." He says, "I cannot. My legs will not respond." Dr. Maria Antonia Nerin, a specialist in mountain medicine and the only physician on the expedition, takes over continuous communication: radio, satellite phone, unbroken contact. She will talk to Calafat through the entire night. Her testimony will later become the key medical document of this story, contradicting nearly everything the newspapers will write. Nerin is categorical. Calafat does not have cerebral edema. No confusion, no disorientation, no delirium, nothing that points to high-altitude cerebral edema. He is lucid, focused, coherent. When Nerin asks him to read the coordinates from his GPS unit, he does so precisely, digit by digit, without error. A person with brain damage at altitude is incapable of that. The real diagnosis is simpler and more terrifying. 14 hours of climbing without enough water caused severe dehydration. Dehydration led to hypokalemia, a critical drop in blood potassium levels. Potassium controls muscle contractions, and when there is not enough of it, the muscles shut down. They do not ache, they do not weaken. They simply stop working. Calafat cannot move his legs, not because he is tired, but because his body has chemically switched off. The GPS coordinates reveal another problem. Base camp believed Calafat was at roughly 7,200 meters, close to Camp 4, relatively accessible for a rescue operation. But his actual position is 7,600 meters, 400 meters higher. A different zone, a different level of difficulty, a different calculation of oxygen and time. The night of the 27th to the 28th of April over Annapurna is quiet. A full moon bathes the north face in cold silver light. There is almost no wind. The temperature is low, but not lethal for a man in a down suit. The conditions for a rescue are ideal, but there is no one to rescue him. In Camp 4 lie 3 people who are unable to get up. On the wall, a paralyzed man who can see the moon, hear the silence, and understand everything that is happening to him. At 5 in the morning, on the 28th of April, Calafat sends Sherpa Sonam down. He tells him, "You can no longer help. Descend while you still can." Sonam leaves. Calafat remains on the slope alone. The morning of the 28th of April begins with bargaining. In Camp 4, Oyarzábal and Pauner, one blind and the other frostbitten, contact the expedition of Korean climber Oh Yoon-sun. The Korean team has fresh Sherpas in Camp 3 who did not go for the summit. The climb to Calafat would take a few hours for an acclimatized person. The Spaniards offer 6,000 euros per Sherpa, who will ascend with oxygen, water, and food. The Sherpas refuse. The Korean expedition breaks camp and heads down. The only high-altitude helicopter in Nepal, a Swiss AS-350B3, is busy rescuing 7 Koreans on Manaslu, 150 kilometers to the east. It will not arrive before the morning of the 29th, and the valley beneath Annapurna is filling with clouds that no aircraft can penetrate. 3 possibilities: Sherpas, helicopter, weather, close within hours. Calafat is still in contact, still conscious, still paralyzed. In Camp 4, Horia Kolobasanu volunteers to go up if there is oxygen. There is no full bottle, only a half-full one of Russian manufacture. Without a full supply, Kolobasanu does not set out. A sleeping bag, some food, water, a package of corticosteroids, and that half bottle are taken by Sherpa Dawa. Dawa is around 50 years old. 30 hours ago, he stood on the summit of Annapurna. He descended in 8 hours. He has not slept. His body should be at its limit. After summiting an 8,000er, recovery takes days, not hours. By 3 in the afternoon, the weather on the upper mountain has broken. Snowfall, gusting wind, plummeting temperature. But Dawa packs his bag and toward evening steps out of the tent. It is snowing. The wind is blowing. Visibility extends no farther than an outstretched arm. Pawner will say later, sending Dawa up felt like sending a man to his death. He does not discuss the odds, does not bargain for money, does not lay out conditions. The 50-year-old Nepali simply walks upward to where young Sherpas refuse to go for 6,000 euros, to where professionals with 23 8,000ers between them could not return, with half a bottle of oxygen and a sleeping bag for a man who might already be dead. Nearly 24 hours of continuous contact pass. On the evening of the 28th of April, Dr. Nerine is still on the radio. Calafat's voice changes. What in the morning were clear phrases and precise coordinates has become something she will later describe as a thread of life, a barely audible sound in which you can still make out human speech, but in which there is no longer enough strength for whole words. Calafat reports, the snow is burying him. Nerine tells him, dig, make a shelter, shield yourself from the wind. What he answers, or whether he answers, is unknown. Around 8 in the evening, contact breaks. The radio is silent. The satellite phone does not respond. Nerine keeps calling, once, again, once more, into emptiness. From this moment on, no one ever hears the voice of Tolo Calafat again. Somewhere on the wall between Camp 4 and the point whose coordinates Calafat read out the night before, Sherpa Dawa climbs upward. In darkness, in a snowstorm, alone. Dawa climbs for 7.5 hours. He follows the route, searches for tracks, listens. The snowfall buries everything. The trail, the ropes, the ice screws, every landmark. At 7,500 meters in a blizzard, visibility shrinks to an arm's length. Dawa searches methodically, section by section, as far as the darkness allows. He reaches the area of Calafat's GPS coordinates. There is nothing. Fresh snow lies in a smooth layer, as if no one had ever been on this slope. The descent takes another 4.5 hours, 12 hours total, up and down, in a storm, at an altitude where every step drains a resource the body does not replenish. Dawa returns to Camp 4 at dawn on the 29th of April, alive, alone. Almost no one writes about this man. In articles about the Annapurna tragedy, his name flickers in a sentence or two, buried between the Oyarzabal scandal and the accusations against the Koreans. But Dawa is the only one who went back up the mountain when everyone else could not or would not. He did what was by every calculation impossible, and it was not enough. The night of the 28th to the 29th of April on Annapurna brings snowfall, wind, and temperatures that drop to where a down suit stops protecting. Dr. Nerine, describing Calafat's final moments, will choose her words carefully. He fell asleep peacefully, without suffering. Hypothermia in its final stage works like anesthesia. The body stops feeling cold, consciousness fades smoothly, without a jolt. Nerine believes this happened before the night turned truly brutal. Dawn on the 29th of April arrives with the thrum of a rotor. At 6 in the morning, a stripped-down AS-350B, 3 Eurocopter, appears above Annapurna Base Camp. The doors and passenger seats have been removed. Every kilogram shed buys extra meters of altitude at which the machine can still stay airborne. At the controls is Swiss pilot Danny Oftenblatten, one of the few people in the world who can fly where the air is too thin for normal aerodynamics. In the cabin beside him sits Jorge Egocheaga, the very Spaniard who 2 days earlier stood on the summit of Annapurna first. Now he is a spotter, the pilot's eyes. The helicopter flies from Camp 4 toward the summit. First pass. Aufdenblatten steers the aircraft along the route while Ego Cheaga scans the slope. White on white, fresh snow has leveled the terrain, buried the tracks, hidden everything that during the night still protruded above the surface. Second pass, the same section, lower, slower. Third pass, directly over the point whose coordinates Calafat read by phone 36 hours earlier. According to one account, Ego Cheaga spots something. A dark patch nearly covered by snow, the outline of a body. According to other sources, he sees nothing. Aufdenblatten announces, rescue at 7,600 meters is impossible. The helicopter can physically reach that altitude, but cannot hover there. The thin air does not give the blades enough lift for a stationary hold. The aircraft can fly horizontally, but cannot stop and lower a cable. Picking up a person, even one alive, even one capable of clipping in, from that point is not possible. The helicopter descends to Camp 4. Here begins an operation that will go down in the history of high-altitude rescues. Irreversible, Pauner, and Kolobasanu are evacuated by long line. The helicopter hovers above the platform at roughly 6,950 meters. A steel cable with a harness is lowered. The climber clips in, and the aircraft drops down the valley with a human being dangling in the air beneath the fuselage. Each one is lifted separately. Pauner, blind, clips in by feel. Irreversible, with frostbitten feet, hobbles to the cable. At the time, it is one of the highest helicopter evacuations ever conducted in the Himalayas. Sherpas Dawa and Sonam refuse. They have watched people hoisted by the cable and carried off into the abyss beneath the belly of the roaring machine, and they cannot bring themselves to clip in. They descend on foot. That same morning, Irreversible goes on the air live on Radio Nacional de España. His voice is hoarse, scoured by high-altitude wind. He says, "Tolo has definitively died. This morning we called him. The phone rang, but clearly nothing more can be done." In Palma de Mallorca, it is 7 in the morning. Margalida, Calafat's wife, learns first. 8-year-old Michele leaves for school as usual. He is told nothing until the middle of the day. Official cause of death: exhaustion leading to dehydration, progressing to hypokalemia that paralyzed the muscles, after which the hypothermia of the second night shut down the body for good. The body of Tolo Calafat remains on Annapurna. The Spanish military will later confirm, evacuating a body from that altitude is not feasible. Margalida does not appear before cameras. Calafat's family chooses silence, the only thing left when words will not bring anything back. A family friend, Pere Joan March, says one line, "We had hope, and now the news has frozen us." He adds, "The family does not wish to criticize either the climbers or the rescue effort." Irreversible, still from the mountain, attacks O Yun Sun over the satellite phone. Her Sherpas refuse to help a dying man. Her team may have stripped the ropes. The conflict turns personal. Critics, above all on Mallorca, turn the accusations around. You are the most experienced. You are the de facto leader. You saw that Tolo was weaker, and you let him continue. Why did you not turn him around before the summit? Why did you not go back up? Pauner adds a line that will provoke fury across the entire island. If there is anyone to blame, it is Tolo Calafat himself. Irreversible, in an interview with Desnivel, "I feel guilty, but I do not know of what." The newspaper Dea sums it up. Mountaineering has never before sunk to public accusations of this magnitude. The scandal will blow over. There will be no formal investigation. A death at extreme altitude in Nepal is classified as an accident. Not a single rule will change. Only the questions will remain. The ropes. 200 meters of fixed line, installed in the morning, vanished by evening. Pauner blamed the Koreans. They denied it. Not a single witness. If the ropes had been in place, the descent would have taken half the time, and Calafat might have reached camp alive. One variable, and the entire story could have been different. The helicopter. On the 28th of April, the skies above Annapurna are clear and still. Calafat is conscious, his coordinates known to the meter. He is able to clip into a cable. The only helicopter in the region is on Manaslu. Between life and death stands the schedule of someone else's disaster, the summit decision. Irreversible acknowledged that he saw Calafat's weakness on the way up. The rule to turn around by 2 in the afternoon is known to every high-altitude climber. A summit at 4:15 is 2 hours past the limit. Who should have stopped it? Calafat, himself, Irreversible, him, or above 8,000 meters, does everyone answer only for their own survival? The body of Tolo Calafat remains on Annapurna. Snow buried him on the night of the 29th of April, 2010, at 7,600 meters, and the mountain never gave him back. A technician from Mallorca who lived at sea level and kept climbing until the mountains would not let him come down.